Welcome to Portfolio Stories, Science and Success, a podcast where we explore inspiring journeys, groundbreaking research, and the people shaping the future of science.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Portfolio Podcast. It is an absolute honor for me to introduce Professor Dr. Paul Schulz, who is not only a physician scientist of incredible caliber, but has been my mentor for 17 years. Dr. Paul Schulz trained as a neurologist from Baylor College of Medicine. He followed it up with a fellowship in cellular neurophysiology, also from Baylor. And then he worked there as the neurology residency program director, as well as the vice chair for education. Since 2010, Dr. Schulz has been a distinguished professor at UTHealth in Houston. He is also the vice chair of neurology and the director of the dementia research program. So Dr. Schulz, as you can see, wears many hats, but I think one of the most incredible features has been that he has been a mentor to a number of highly successful neuroscientists, neurologists, and psychiatrists. I am actually, absolutely honored to be one of his mentees. So Dr. Schulz, incredible journey, as we all see, but where did it start from?
Oh, wow. What happened is I hadn't thought about this for a while, but my grandmother, my mom's mom, kind of lived with us when I was a young kid because she had multiple sclerosis. And she was a real sweetheart, but she couldn't get out of the wheelchair the last few years and all that kind of stuff. And there was really no treatment in the 60s for that kind of stuff. And she passed away from that when I was around 7, 8 years old. It made a huge impact on my life. So as I went through education and I saw areas that were interesting to me, I kind of came down to medicine and physics. And then I thought, Jesus, if I was going to study anything, I ought to do medicine, because if we do anything at all to help someone with MS, I could see the effect of that it would have had on my grandmother. Now, it turned out cognitive function was even more interesting to me, but there's enough Alzheimer's people to help that I've been very happy in that area. But I've always thought about that. MS would have been another really interesting area, and I could see the impact of that for my poor grandmother. That's where it got started.
So you grew up in Chicago, right? And
Yeah.
as I know that you were mentioning, there's a huge Polish community there, and
Yes, there is.
you were going to all these Polish restaurants and trying out pierogi. How did it feel to be in Poland now and looking at the science in Poland?
Oh, that's a really good question. Yeah, I grew up in a neighborhood. Obviously, my grandparents were German, but it was German, Polish, Irish predominantly in the area, a little Italian. Greek was a couple miles away. Honestly, I feel like I know Poland because there were so many people there who were Polish, but also they didn't speak a word of English. So you'd go to the restaurant to order and you'd have to kind of point to stuff. But I got used to hearing what they sounded like. Mm-hmm. So when I hear people talking here in Polish, it sounds very familiar to me. But you grow up in Chicago, you have no idea what the rest of the world's doing. It's like The King and I, the movie, he shows, here's Siam, and here's the rest of the world. You figure, Chicago must be the center of then as you grow up, you learn that it's not true. And it's been really stunning to be here 2 years ago and then now, because I knew nothing about it. And it's been wonderful to get to see the people and the science. And the last 3 days have just been unbelievable to see the conference here and all the people and what they're doing. It's been really spectacular.
Fantastic. So familiar territory, and I guess another familiar territory for you is translational research, right? I mean, this interface between clinical research and basic science research and how we can combine it all to help, the patient community. So this has also been something, very inspiring and phenomenal in your journey. You started as a clinician and a very successful clinician, but then you did a fellowship in cellular neurophysiology, right? Which means going onto the rig and kind of being hyper focused on finding out what's going on inside the cells.
In one cell.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In one damn cell, right?
Yeah, one darn cell.
How were you able to manage it all? And how were you able to pick out, let's say, some of the basic science elements and make your clinical research more mechanistic?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think it's a good lesson also for the young folks. neurophysiology, to this day, I think is really fun. I mean, when you're sitting there listening to a cell, you're literally, it's talking to you. You can hear it firing. And then you do something to induce long-term potentiation or depression, and you can hear the sound change. I mean, it's really talking to you. It still excites me tremendously. But I got into it in the 80s, and it was the hottest thing then. But really, 5-10 years later, genetics, immunology, you know, they really superseded what I could do with a single cell. And applying a single cell to understanding Alzheimer's was really tough. I could work on the mechanisms underlying memory and forgetting and all that, but applying it to the disease was really tough. And this is one really huge lesson in my life, was that I eventually said, well, you know, I'm doing two things, and the clinical stuff and the clinical research and the ability on the clinical side to collaborate with labs is really great. But if I try to work just in my own lab, part-time essentially, because you're doing other stuff, I felt like I never really got as effective as I could be, and I thought the technique had really been superseded. So I made a big decision in my life. It hurt my heart, broke my heart, to give that up and to do the other side solely. Turned out to be one of the best decisions in my life. I mean, it really, now I talk to geneticists and give them stuff. I still work with physiologists, I give them stuff, you know, blood, spinal fluid, brain tissue when someone passes away. It turned out to be a great decision, and really both sides of science are really, I hate to say fun because it's about people and disease, you know, but they're really rewarding and interesting and stimulating, and the more you get going in it, and the greater the area you're involved in, the more addicting it is. Be real careful, students and postdocs. You can get addicted, and you could be sitting here 40 years later, having had a great career at it.
Absolutely.
And,
yeah, and you could inspire others to do the same, right? And then you see like little versions of yourself doing the same.
Oh yeah, it's what keep, you know. Well, like earlier today, you asked me, you know, and people are asking me, I don't know, what do I look like I'm about to retire or something? People are asking me, where are you going from here? I ain't going nowhere. I'm having the best time of my life. So, you know, as long as I can do this, I will do this, because it's really, and things have happened, you know, in the area of Alzheimer's 40 years ago. You know, the day I graduated from med school was almost the exact day that a chemist was able to break apart an amyloid plaque and tell us what was in it. It was 1984.
Wow.
What was their names? Glenner and Wong, I think. Two chemists. They used high-dose formic acid to break it apart. Well, the point is that before that, we didn't even know what the plaques were. How could you study them? And knowing what it was made a difference, but we still didn't really have any rationales. So we did lots of trials over the years, but we were beating our head against the wall. And it was a long period of time where you're just trying different stuff until finally you get a breakthrough. And the last few years have been so rewarding and so positive, because we finally got some stuff that's having an effect on Alzheimer's.
Absolutely.
And it's changed my psychology, and it's changed the psychology of the people I'm seeing. I say, well, you've got MCI. The good news is that's much better than FTD and LBD, where we really haven't made as many strides yet. This is something I can treat. You've got plaques in your brain. Here they are on your amyloid PET scan. We can get rid of those. And that'll have an impact on where things go from here. It's just a stunning.
Yeah.
It's honestly, when I see these amyloid PET scans turn negative, it's still astounding to me.
Yeah, must feel really rewarding. Yeah.
It's unbelievable. What's the word? Puts the hair on my neck up or something, whatever that expression is. That's what it does, yeah. Gives you, I mean, just 2 weeks ago I was in clinic, and I showed this woman and her husband, here's your scan from a year ago, and here's your scan now. Nothing. And I'm like, wow. We had never seen this in my entire career until the last 3 to 4 years. And it still astounds me every time I see it.
Yeah. And what's like really amazing for me is that not only are you applying these like fantastic treatment modalities now, you've actually contributed to those, and like you work on ALS and FTD, the clinical overlap, and then all the work on the risk factors and the protective effect of vaccination on Alzheimer's disease. I think there's so many phenomenal discoveries, but let's say let's list them out. What do you think have been your three achievements or 3 discoveries you're most proud of? Like you look back at them and you feel like they should go in my autobiography.
Oh, wow. That's a toughie. I've been really blessed to have a lot of stuff. I think the work you and I did in FTD ALS was really phenomenal, and it really led to the idea they were part of one disease, and then the guy we collaborated with showed that they both had a certain inclusion that united them, TDP43, and that kind of broke the whole field open, because then you could figure out why it ran in families and all that stuff, and now I'm even doing a trial of people with the C9orf72 mutation who had FTD and ALS, so we're coming back around to, hey, we finally got something rational to try treating them with. I don't know if it'll work, but we have something. Yeah, so that's one big area that I think has been really rewarding. The other is, there's a lot of folks studying Alzheimer's, and we're all doing trials and talking and all that. But when you're in there, you really do get the feeling that you're having an impact. It might just be one of the spokes on the wheel where there's 100 other spokes. But whether it's working together as a group or, advising pharmaceutical companies, because they're good scientists, but they don't know what to do clinically. And so when I get invited to advise this company or that company and get some input into what goes on. So even though I didn't discover the cure for Alzheimer's, I feel like I've been a part of the process of all of us getting further ahead.
Absolutely.
And that's been absolutely rewarding. And to have 3 drugs in the last 4 years actually turn out positive, just been astounding. And the impact is really obvious in clinic, where all of my patients are progressing more slowly than they used to, in a very obvious way, to me and to them and to their families. And I think the vaccination story is pretty new. We have been working on it for 5 years, but it's not fully mature until we get the animal model working. But I think that's going to turn out to be one of the more rewarding ones also, because until we cure Alzheimer's disease, preventing it is going to be a very important tool. And even once we have a cure for it, I'd still rather prevent it than try to fix the brain cells after someone's gotten the disease.
Yeah, it's great that you mentioned the vaccination story, because I think it's, it could be a complete game changer, right? And I mean, it could be one of the ways in which we can convince our older adults to go for vaccination. I mean, usually a lot of them, they can be, let's say, a little bit shy about this, but I think knowing that this will make their aging like a much healthier process and stay away from Alzheimer's disease and potentially other neurodegenerative illnesses as well, right? So I think this could be really effective in the long run. And I want to make this discovery a bit more accessible to everyone. So if you could just put in a couple of lines, what would be your advice? Imagine I'm a 75-year-old sitting in front of you. What would you tell me about the utility of vaccination against Alzheimer?
Yeah, so the audience wouldn't know this, but what we showed is that 3 annual influenza vaccines reduces the risk of Alzheimer's about 20%, as far as we can tell. And 6 annual ones reduces it about 40%. And the effect is, we've looked at 4, 6, and 8 years, and it's present in all of them, which is way longer than the vaccine lasts against the flu. I don't know what the ultimate end is, but it means, in real terms, like I was showing earlier this week, if you've got, 900,000 people vaccinated, 900,000 not, 80,000 get Alzheimer's in one group and only 50,000 in the other. That's 30,000 people that did not get Alzheimer's disease. That's just astounding. And the disease is so awful for people that have it and for their loved ones, watching their loved one disappear one brain cell at a time. That 30,000 fewer people walking around just from the one cohort we were looking at. What an impact on people's lives there.
Absolutely. And on the health systems, right? I mean, the socioeconomic impact of it. So it's huge.
I don't know over here, but in the United States, Alzheimer's is by far the most expensive disease. I mean, economically, you can't put a price on the emotional component of it. But if you take heart disease, cancer, and stroke, Alzheimer's is more expensive than that, because you have to take care of them. That's about $300-400 billion a year. And then loved ones have to retire early, whatever, to take care of them, because poor things can't take care of themselves. And we estimate that to be another $300-400 billion. So $800 billion a year cost to the United States healthcare. And that's just one country in the world, what do we have, 5% of the world in the United States. Yeah. So it's a hugely, and then if you talk about the emotional impact, oh my God, watching people watch their loved ones go through this is really terrible. Yeah, so anything we can do to lower that risk is just really wonderful.
Yeah, I see like so much compassion there, and like it's a great mix of like scientific curiosity and compassion. And in your journey, like combining both of them, like I mentioned, you've worn like many hats. You've been a teacher, you've been a great mentor, you've been an excellent scientist and a clinician. And if I would ask you, let me just make it more interesting. So, teaching, mentorship, clinic, and science. Mm-hmm. If you were to give up one of those, which one would you do first?
Oh man, my left arm or my right arm? I like them both. That's really tough.
Okay, let's rank them. I don't want you to give up on any of those ever. So yeah.
You remember Stan Appel? He was the chairman of neurology when I was a resident in the 80s, and he stayed the chair until 2007. Then moved next door to Methodist, where he was chair until 2 years ago. Yeah. Anyway, he's now 94 years old, and I still see the guy, mostly because I get my hair cut on Thursday morning at 7:30, and he has the same barber at 8. So I see him every 2 weeks.
Yeah, you overlap.
Yeah. But he told me decades ago that he's an ALS investigator, and he's been working on it so long, and he's gotten so close. You feel like he's going to cure it and get a Nobel Prize, but in the meantime, he told me decades ago that the most rewarding part of his career, while the science is fascinating and taking care of patients is, and he loves both, he says the fact that he's trained several hundred people who are now around the world doing stuff turned out to be the most rewarding thing, well, until he gets the Nobel Prize. But I have to concur with him that, out of the blue, people send me a note. I got one last week. The guy says, I don't know if you remember me, but I was a resident of yours 25 years ago. I'm like, yeah, of course I remember you. How are you doing? What's up? And I love to hear what they're up to and what their family's up to, what their career's like, what successes they've had. Anyway, you would think the science or the patient care would be the top, but honestly, the people you've been involved in influencing over the years. I mean, I remember this one thin little guy 17 years ago who was just bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and I didn't have to do anything. All I had to do is show him how, sit in on this conference and hear us talking about patients, hear us talking about research. And then the guy ran with that, and now look where he is. He's a big muckety-muck here in Poland.
Yeah, no, that's super kind of you. But there's so much which I learned from you. I bet like all your mentees, they've had so much inspiration from you, and they've gained so much knowledge from you. But what I'm interested in is how much do you learn from your mentees? Is it like a bi-directional exchange?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Number one, you're not born learning how to be a mentee or mentor.
Yeah.
And so number one, you learn over time things that worked and didn't. So you get feedback, and I love the feedback. Yeah. The other thing is like watching the stuff that you've explored and discovered. I'm like, oh my God, that's a great idea. I should have thought of that years ago. But you're smart and you're off doing your thing. Your whole Mir 233 story this week that you talked about, oh my God, what are the chances of finding, when I was training, Gregor Mendel was still crossing the yellow, or the white and the blue, green pea, and that was where genetics was. And now you're identifying something that's transgenerational, that is not in the genome at all. I mean, that's a huge deal. And there wasn't even mRNA, circular mRNAs. Mm-hmm. I think we might have known about RNA, and DNA and protein. That was about it. And really, Watson and Crick got their Nobel Prize, was it the 70s, for figuring out that DNA is actually two pairs.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I mean, that's where we were then. So, and that's why I went into physiology instead of genetics. There wasn't anything known in genetics, nothing exciting yet. Anyway, to circle back to the question, watching that kind of a thing happen. And I saw your posters this afternoon on TDP-43 and its role in the cell, figuring out what it's actually doing. I mean, we didn't even know what TDP-43 was 15
Exactly.
years
Yeah,
ago when
yeah.
we were doing
It just came out,
FTD
right? Yeah,
ALS
exactly.
story. We figured out they're related to each other, so there's something being deposited in them. And up till then, it turned out people had stained brains and didn't see anything. But it turned out it was a particle that wasn't being stained by those particular stains. And Trojanowski, a gifted neuropathologist, threw another thing on there and saw that there was this TDP-43, and then that started the whole story. Now here you are, figuring out what TDP-43 does, and some of the other folks in the room here.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, and that really like completes the, when we talk about this this dialogue between like the bedside and the bench. I think like your research has been like an excellent initiator of these dialogues by making these like very incisive observations, on clinical cohorts, which we can then validate, in the mouse models, in cell lines, come up with a biomarker, test it back in patients, So I think this gives me goosebumps actually just thinking about it. Yeah.
It's, we always talk about bench to bedside, and I have several trials that basic scientists have come up with some compound and that's fantastic. But in the other direction, we don't really think of it as bedside back to bench so much.
Exactly, yeah.
But the best times are when I'm sitting there thinking about something, I go, that's weird. Like decades ago, when you were there and I said, hey, I've never seen someone with FTD and ALS. Why would that be? They're both common diseases. They ought to be co-occurring at a fairly significant rate, but I'd never seen one. And that was the whole genesis of you running with that and coming out with a big neuron paper about, when you have FTD, you don't get Alzheimer's disease because the same inclusions there, they release the microglia, which then eat the amyloid.
Yeah.
Sure enough, it turned out it was correct. You don't see the two together, and it turned out to be a fascinating mechanism underlying it. Of course, we never developed that therapeutically because the good news would be you wouldn't get Alzheimer's. The bad news was you had FTD ALS. So, but with what you're doing now with the TDP-43, eventually maybe we'll be able to give people the treatment for Alzheimer's without the side effect of having these bad diseases.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, coming from you, it truly means a lot. And just like, thinking about this aspect of your life where you've been like an excellent mentor to many. Was there ever a moment when you thought about, okay, maybe I want to try something else. Maybe I want to become a consultant, go to the industry. Like, were there times like that? Challenging moments?
Yeah, I'll tell you, and this is probably the biggest advice I can give to young people, and that is, your career is going to change every 5 years approximately. And it's going to change for a lot of reasons, some of which you can control, some of which you have no control over. The big thing is to keep thinking all the time about what direction you want to go. And, part of the swing from lab to clinical was opportunities and what you could actually make a living at and all kinds of other questions. So yeah, I think whatever you're doing now in the lab, you're going to be doing something very different 5 years. And it may be because you discover something and go in a direction, it may be opportunities. So yeah, the idea of, well, what about industry? What about this? What about that? Each of those has come up every 5 years when I've had to make a decision about. I mean, a good example was, this is not directly related, but I thought I'd be at Baylor forever. It was a great school.
Right.
But the president, who was a real nice guy personally, like myself, he's not a businessman, and he made a few bad choices. So the school was on the run financially, and so I had to leave there. So boy, what a change of. I had to leave the lab there. I had to leave everything. I left there with like one suitcase. That's all they allowed me to do, and I walked 100 feet to another institution. Thank God it's right there, and set up shop and had to start over again. And thank God, 15 years later, everything got a big group again, and we're doing great stuff. But anyway, things like that happen. They come out of the blue. But what I found is that every time something bad happens and I reconsider things and think things through again, something better happens.
Amazing. So there's always an opportunity in adversity.
Yeah, exactly. Sounds kind of trite, but it's actually true. It's actually true. Hey, look, you're 26 years younger than me, but you've already had to make choices along the way to end up here at this institution.
Yeah.
Things happen, and You have to make adjustments. The smart people will always adapt, by the way. And I don't mean that not everybody is smart or anything, but I just mean that you have to be smart about it. You have to be thinking and adapting with your career to keep moving forward. It's the same with the questions you choose to do, right? You have to decide as you make discoveries, well, this seems like a good route because if I take that, it'll have this implication. Or maybe this other route is a better one, and you have to make those decisions all the time. And each one of them ends up having a big impact on where you go and whether things go well or whether you have a blind alley there. And so all those decisions, they add up. And for whatever reason, then every 5 years, it seems to me, I've ended up changing a lot by pursuing something.
Yeah. No, that's a great advice. And actually one thing quite remarkable in your journey has been that you've also been extremely open-minded to anything new coming up, right? I mean, like you, as you mentioned, like when genetics came up, like you started incorporating it into your, proof of concept studies. Then now you're doing a lot of like AI and machine learning and bioinformatics. And I mean, I don't mean to say that you're old because I know that you ran like more than 5K yesterday. So you're still super young. But I see that a lot of professors at this age, they tend to be a little bit, not open to new ideas and stuff. So where does it come from? Like, is this how you are as a person or as an academic?
Well, honestly, part of it is I don't want to be that old dinosaur. I mean, we all work with a lot of people, and some of the folks my age are real flexible, and some have gotten kind of inflexible. And I watch that, and I go, oh my God, I hope maybe I'm like that, and I don't know it, because I don't think the inflexible people know they are. But yeah, I want to keep doing things. And this is a trivial example, but just yesterday, Ali said to me, are you on Instagram? And I said, yes. He goes, oh my God, it never occurred to me you'd be on Instagram. I'm like, why? Because I've got gray hair? I mean, so I keep up with a few things the young people do. Honestly, though, mostly that's because my kids post there. So if I want to know about their vacations, I have to go on Instagram. But anyway, that would be, that's just the whole computer era and electronic medical records. I can't tell you how many women and men my age decided to give up seeing patients because they just didn't want to have to learn an operating system that you're going to have to put stuff in. I mean, I've got so many friends that are retired my age. It's terrible, I think, and I think they miss it. I mean, they like seeing patients and all that, but they didn't want to have to learn it. Anyway, the point is that all of these adaptations, you can either decide I've had enough, or you can say, you know what, I can figure this out. Or worst comes to worst, I just call my grandson in and say, hey, how does this work? So someone under 12 can tell me what to do. Don't go so fast. Tell Grandpa which key to hit, and how to make that work.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so that's how you keep moving.
It's so heartening to hear. What would be one advice you would give to, an aspiring scientist, physician scientist, or let's say a young grad student who wants to figure it all out?
I don't want to dampen down the figure it all out because it turns out that's really tough.
Yeah.
I'm still working on that one. I think we heard some things upstairs or in the other building that I would say is really true. Number one, and it sounds kind of trite, but if you find an area you really like, then it's not going to work at all. And as I said, I work during the day. I go home, visit with my wife, grandkids. They go to sleep. I go in my office and start working again. And it doesn't feel like work because I'm like, Jesus, I'm sitting there playing with the grandkid and I'm thinking, wow, there's another idea there. I wonder if we should investigate this question. And then I go in my office and write it down and I start thinking about it. So whatever you're passionate about will make it not be a job. It'll be something where, honestly, if the school said they had to cut back and downsize me, I would still go there every day, even though I wasn't actually employed, because I like what I'm doing, and I would just do it for free then. At various points in my life, my wife argued that I was doing it for close to free when I was younger. But so something you're passionate about, and think along the way what the implication is. Like, I wanted to do something with disease, so every time, like when I was in the lab and it just wasn't really direct enough. For someone else, that stuff is great, and and I love the physiology, and I think people should pursue that. But for me, I wanted it to be more directly because of my grandmother, and so forth. And so I kind of went over to this side. That was a great decision. And then within neurology, which area was really the most fascinating to me? It's how people think and feel, and what happens when that doesn't work right, and what it looks like. And I still sit in clinic every day, and I listen to someone, and I'm like, oh my God, listen to that. He understands this, but doesn't understand that. There's a circuit there that's not working quite right. There's another one that still works fine. And when you see what happens and how it's disrupted, and you're figuring out in your mind how people do actually think and feel, it's just astounding. Again, I hate to say it's fascinating because it's people's lives.
Of course.
But it is fascinating, and then the fact that we're helping them allows me to say, okay, I can be allowed to think this is interesting while I'm helping them.
Yeah, that actually reminds me of this, the concept of ikigai. I think it's like 3 things, but it's like a Japanese concept that you should do something which you're passionate about and something you're good at. There's a third one which I don't remember right now, but I see a bit of that, right? Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's clear that you're passionate about what you do and you're really good at what you do, right? And I think that's what we should all pursue. And if I would take it like a few years further, so let's say it's not like a young emerging scientist, but it's someone who has had a bit of experience like me. Some things turned out well, a couple of things didn't turn out well. I bet there were experiences like that for you, right? But I still see so much passion and vigor and energy for you to look forward to. So what is it that you look forward to?
You're absolutely right. There's always dead ends and things that didn't work out, and giving up the lab was really emotionally difficult. But what happens as your career goes along is that you have more and more areas of success, just because you've been beating your head against the wall for decades now, and things turn out. And so, whereas when I was in the beginning, there was one that was going well and 5 that were really challenging, now it's the opposite. There's 5 that are going really well and one where you're like, I want to explore that, but I don't know where it's going to take me. And the more good areas you have, things snowball in that direction. Like I was mentioning in one of the conferences here, now geneticists contact me and say, hey, we're looking at genetics of Alzheimer's. We really need some input from someone on the clinical side. Yeah. And my God, I had to give up physiology because they superseded, their technique superseded me. But now it turns out it's a two-way street. So I get to work with them and learn about what they're doing and hear about MIR-233 and things that were completely unanticipated. And then the diagnosticians, there's still protein chemist people looking at things that could be helpful. There's imaging people that are looking at diagnostic tools. I won't bore you with all of them, but it's just I'm giving patients to all of them, or samples of blood, or sending them for a electrical test or a special kind of MRI. There are people developing new kinds of MRIs. When I was in college, CAT scans came out. I mean, before that, we hadn't seen anybody's brain. We hadn't seen them at all. And here we were starting at, of course, the resolution was 1 centimeter. So you could, a brain cut was 30 pixels, and that was it. So if there was a subdural this big, you'd see it. If there were a stroke that big, otherwise. But look at that. That's in our lifetime. And then MRIs and PET scans. And now we're doing next generation PET imaging. I've got a guy who thinks he can tell me who's got amyloid in the brain and who doesn't, not on an amyloid PET scan, but on an MRS. An MRI where he's figured out certain chemical compositions of plaques that he thinks is going to. So I'm sending him people with a positive or a negative amyloid PET scan, and I hope that he's able to tell me, because then a year or 5 years from now, I won't need amyloid PETs. I'll just send them for their MRI that I have to send them for anyway, and have him add this 5-minute thing on there where he tells me.
So it's like all the evolution of neuroscience, which really excites you. Which you look forward to. So we could go on probably talking forever, like we always do, but at some point, I would need to wrap this up, and I do want to actually throw in a question about family, because I've had the honor to meet Sue, your wife. I've had the honor to meet Jonathan, all your family, and I see that you're you're a loving dad. You're like a, as a human being, this I must say with a lot of conviction that Dr. Schulz is a great scientist, but I would say he's one of the greatest human beings I've met, actually.
Oh, geez.
A very kind mentor.
Thank you.
And so there must have been a lot of sacrifices at the personal level, right? And there must have been a lot of support from Sue and from your kids as well. Do you want to say like a couple of things about that?
Yeah, if I was advising young people, I would say, number one, go ahead and get married. I survived it. And I was voted least likely to get married. And he knows my wife, Sue. She's a real straight shooter. And we had dated a couple years, and she basically said, we either get married or I'm leaving. And I was like, oh, that's option B doesn't sound very good, but option A, I'm not ready for it. Well, she kind of, pushed me, and thank God she did, because what was it? A few weeks ago, we celebrated our 34th anniversary.
Wow.
It wouldn't have happened if she hadn't pushed me along. I'd have lost her, and then, And when you're an early scientist, you're working really hard, and you're also at the lowest economic position you're going to be in your life. So there's a lot of pressures outside the family. And thank God she started working part-time so that she could raise the kids. And thank God they're all seem to be doing really well, if I could say that. And I guess I can say that because it's 100% her, not me. And now we've got 2 grandsons. I mean, oh my God, they're so cute and they're so fun to be around. But at all 3 weddings of my kids, I cried. I've cried 3 times in my life. Jonathan's wedding, Maddie's wedding, Audrey's. Because you look back and you say, you know what? They're so special to me, but I wish I had even more time with them when they were growing up. Because as the dad, I mean, it's not gender specific. I've got women who I work with whose husbands are the full-time dad. You just need someone to be there with the kids.
Exactly. Yeah.
And if there's someone, the one who's doing more work and less with the kids, feels like, I wish I had been able to spend more. Now they're leaving home, being married. But on the other hand, you're happy as heck because they're successful. And one of the measures of success in life is, like, do they want to get married? If they do, then they must have looked at Sue and I and said, hey, it worked out for them. So it's not something we fear. It's something that's a good deal in life, to love someone and decide to have a partnership and to have kids together and go through all the tough times. When, the first 10 years, there's a lot of stresses. You're both overtired, you're both working, you're both raising the kids, and you're financially strapped. But you come out the other side, and honestly, Sue and I are closer together now than ever. She's not going to see this, is she? I don't want her to know the secret. But it's true. And when the 2 of us, thank God all 3 of our kids moved back to Houston after they trained. So we get to see them and the grandkids. And I think I might have mentioned this to you, I'm not sure, but the best birthday I ever had was just 2 weeks ago. Why? Because my daughter and son-in-law with the 2 grandkids came over for lunch.
Beautiful.
And went swimming with the grandkids. And we were in the pool till they were tired out. It's time for their nap. So they went home for their nap. And then my wife and I met the other 2 kids and their spouses for dinner. So in one day I saw all 3 kids, all their spouses, and all of our grandkids. And that made it the best birthday ever.
Fantastic. That's so beautiful to hear. So thanks a lot, Dr. Schulz, for educating us, for inspiring us, for all the time and the time you've given me and to many mentees like me, and for all the kindness. So again, it's a real tribute. It's an honor to have you here, and we look forward to having you here again in a couple of years.
Thank you very much. And as I mentioned when you introduced me, I'm so proud of you, that it's a delight to be here and see all you're doing and where you're going. And at some point very soon, the mentee is going to pass the mentor. I'm just waiting for that day. Grasshopper, when you can get the stone out of my hand, you've surpassed me. But that's a good deal. You want your mentees and your kids to eventually supersede you. And you're right on. You're on the pathway for that.
Thank you so much. It's an honor.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for watching, and see you in the next episodes.